Hey everyone, welcome to episode 5 of AI Chatter on Archetypical. In this session, we're diving into the revolutionary 1 trillion parameter generative AI model and shining a spotlight on SambaNova Systems, a company you absolutely need to know. Let's chat AI. All right. Hey, Ken. Hey, Marty. I'm going to switch things up slightly on us because I know I had you guys do intros before, and I want to have a little fun with it this time. So instead, I'm going to do your intros, but I had generative AI create some fun intros for each of you that I'm going to read. So start off with you, Marty.
Can only imagine.
Think of Marty as the Indiana Jones of data science, minus the whip, but definitely with the smarts. With a background that spans the Air Force to the forefront of analytics at Archetype Consulting, Marty's not just a data whiz. He's a visionary who once eyed digital photography and proclaimed, "That's going to be huge." So buckle up as we dive into the world of Marty, the man who can find humor in algorithms and adventure in analytics.
Oh
How'd it
my
do?
God.
It's a pretty good. I liked it.
Oh my goodness.
All right, Ken, now here's yours.
Oh
Ken is
boy.
the economist who can surf the data wave as smoothly as the ocean. Our very own data science architect and professional jargon buster has decoded complexities for giants like Disney and Delta, armed with nothing but his wits and a knack for cutting through BS. Today, he's here to translate the world of analytics into plain speak, all while keeping one foot on the surfboard. Get ready for a session that promises to be as enlightening as it is entertaining with Ken, the man who makes algorithms and econometrics cool.
Wow. I love it. We're taking this one on the road. That sounds good.
How'd you build that?
Oh, I
Share.
basically took all of your profiles on LinkedIn, your career blurbs that we've used in the past for write-ups, and said I want to create an intro for our podcast with this. So I'm going to do this every week now, but I'm going to do a new theme
Oh
in it.
boy.
So pick some sort of maybe we go like Harry Potter theme intro, whatever. So uh, so to dive into the full topic, we mentioned it at the intro there. We're going to go into the groundbreaking advancement of SambaNova Systems, a name that's really reshaping the landscape of large language models and AI infrastructure with a unique approach to AI model development and deployment. So SambaNova stands as the forefront, to me, as a generative AI movement, offering alternatives to the traditional paths followed by giants like OpenAI and Google. So we're going to explore their composition of experts architecture that they just announced this week called Samba One. It's an innovative method that combines multiple pre-trained models to act as a singular powerful LLM with over 1 trillion parameters. So why don't we start? Can you guys explain in just simple terms SambaNova's composition of experts model and what
Sure.
exactly that is and how that differs from like the Chat GPT or GPT-4 models?
Yeah. So maybe, Marty, mind if I take a crack at it first?
Go for it.
I was thinking about this. It's kind of like an academic department in a university, right? Take a business school. There's experts in marketing. There's experts in finance. There's experts in economics, and there's experts in accounting. And if you wanted a really specific answer to an accounting question, you would not start by asking an economist for that answer. But instead, if you had this routing mechanism that could take the first pass of the question, identify that it was, and most notably an accounting question and not, say, an econometrics question, you could basically route the question to the right department, talk to the right expert, um, and at the same time, each expert would be able to have more depth and less breadth. And so that's kind of what's going on by trying to bust these models up into many different, very specific models. and we'll get into a second some of the benefits around the parameter problem, and the model size. Marty, anything? What do you think of
I like that analogy. I'll give you another one. Think of it like when you're sick, you go to a primary care doctor. He's the gatekeeper. Are you in the middle of a heart attack and we need to get you to a cardiologist? Or did you just pull a muscle because you put too much on the bench press and you need a physical therapist? The primary care doctor has to know enough to be able to tell you where to go. And that's what SambaNova does. They have a model that tells you it knows enough to know where to go for the specialty knowledge. And then that specialist, cardiologist, really knows the heart real well. So he's going to be able to help you. The physical therapist, she's going to be able to help you relieve the pain on your chest from pulling a muscle when it's not a heart attack. The cardiologist, probably not the person you want to go to if you got to pull a muscle.
Yeah.
And I don't think you want to go to a physical therapist when you're having a heart attack.
Yeah. And then, of course, if you were to go to a primary care doctor, then it becomes the question sort of becomes that the cardiologist is the expert, the primary care provider is the generalist. Can you make a primary care provider be an expert in everything? And that's where that trade-off becomes really difficult. And making one giant model is like making a primary care doctor with expertise, that has expertise in everything.
Just do the math. If a primary care doctor had to go through all the specialized training, like residency and internships that all these specialists do, they'll be in school for 300 years and never get to practice. So it's just untractable. And that's what I think SambaNova has really ingeniously come up with here is you don't have to have this ginormous thing. You can have a panel of experts and you just know which expert to go to.
So is that the difference then between the like GPT-4 models, is that they're more going that like generalist route that knows everything compared
they think they know everything, but we keep seeing pretty funny things in the media on how they don't. And that's that I can't say that word. Help me out. Hallucinating problem that they have, right? Because they just make stuff up.
Yeah. So can you explain to me, I've seen it 1,000 times, I've heard it, I'm sure some of our listeners even don't quite grasp what exactly it means by a trillion parameters. What exactly is a parameter, and then why is a trillion significant?
So a parameter is just a number. I mean, you have an equation. The most basic equation we all learn in like algebra 1, y equals mx plus b. So y is what you're trying to figure out. B is some constant you throw at it, but m is the parameter that you put on x, and it's the slope. So it's a number. Now take that to trillions, where you have such a complicated equation because you got to cover so many different ideas, different permutations of it. So that's where the big numbers come in, because you're trying to reproduce the entire, not just English language, but language of many languages, or speech of many languages on the planet, and the knowledge that goes with that. And so that's where the trillion comes in. It's got to come up with scenarios or answers for all of those things. Ken, what do you think?
Yeah, I like that, Marty. The parameter. So the parameter in Marty's example, the slope, right, of in the line example, a collection of all of those parameters together, combined in the right way, is what gives us an answer. Once we put a string in, we put in a string, which basically, you often hear the term tokens are in there, but basically you're taking the string and you're busting it into pieces, and then basically that's entered into an equation, and through that whole process, that the tokens that go in, the parameters, they're basically multiplied by, and then an answer comes back, right? The size of the number of parameters in those equations is what we're talking about when we're in the billions of parameters, trillions of parameters. That's the number of weights or slopes ish that are inside of each of those inside of each of those models. Now, the novel part about the composition of experts is that rather than having to expand the model this way by adding billions to trillions to even more trillions, instead you kind of have this like smart routing function up here that goes, okay, well, I'm going to send my tokens over to this one model, which, because we know it's a cardiologist model, is only a few billion parameters rather than, up at this stage where it'd have to be a whole bunch of them, right?
Mm.
And once you become like, as long as you route the right way, your answer can't be that wrong, right? But like, if you accidentally route, if the primary care provider, who's the all-knowing expert, inadvertently routes this way to the
Podiatrist.
ophthalmologist,
Yeah.
you're like, you got like totally crazy answers to stuff, right? And that's kind of the it's a very pragmatic approach to solving the generative AI problem by combining a bunch of models together versus trying to create a brand new one. That's all. That's kind of all it is, but it's novel.
Yeah, and just remember, in the end, what you're trying to predict is with an input bunch, sentences or tokens. You're trying to predict the next token or tokens. So that's the modeling that you're doing. You're trying, what's the next word that would make sense, or the answer to this question. So there's some probability involved because it's maybe not 100% answer, but that's what those parameters are doing. They're trying to come up with, hey, I'm really, really sure that this is the right answer. Well, the more parameters I have, the more, it's called degrees of freedom, I can work with to get to that answer.
So is that also to like, this is maybe a dumb question, but like thinking about like a calculator and how there's a point where you put numbers into it, because in an equation, numbers into a calculator, where eventually the calculator just says error, that it can't calculate that high or can't do that big of an equation. Is that an
Kind of.
example of like running out of parameters? Like it doesn't have enough?
Well, that's not the right reason we would necessarily get things wrong, but it is a reason why, and this is where the SambaNova example comes in. If you can somehow utilize a computing environment which is a smidge either smaller or more directed or more applicable for your problem, you can solve the problem better, faster, cheaper. You may not need the bazooka GPU in a world of, and that's not, this is totally unrelated to like the SambaNova example. I mean, I'm sure it's a bazooka for a certain type of model, but you don't always need for inference the same type of compute power that you need for training, right? And so that's a big part of this new world, which we're about to find out. And again, is why the Nvidia, if you watch Nvidia stock, AMD stock, ARM, all these different companies that are specializing in doubling down on chips, they're doubling down on chips not because of the training as much as they're doubling down because of the inference, the prediction. I don't know why we call it. These computer science people calling it inference drives me nuts. But that's a whole. Well, it's prediction, right? It's so, and inference is really about like concluding something about the population from the sample, right? It's a very statistical. If you're a statistician, inference is I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to say something about a large group based on a small sample, and that is not what this is about at all.
They should call it extrapolation, really.
Extrapolation is a yes.
That's what they're doing.
We'll coin that. We're going to push it. We're going to make that the So looking ahead and like considering the rapid evolution of AI, where do you guys see this role of architectures like SambaNova's composition of experts in the future of AI development?
Well, I think it's going to allow people to build their own specialized, very niche models that answer their specific questions, and then rely on an efficient router at the top. And I mean router like a switchboard person who directs your incoming question to the right expert. Now, right now, I think SambaNova, I think their press release said they have like 56 experts. I mean, I see that number going into the hundreds, thousands, millions of experts. You're going to see, and then where the advancements are going to come is that router is going to get really good at knowing who to go to, or maybe who to go to, meaning a couple people, because you may see as this thing scales, the router says, "Hey, this looks kind of like this, but I think it's got a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So let's get 3 answers and let's kludge them together to get a really good answer." Because how many times do you really get just one expert on something? You want kind of multiple opinions, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's where I see it scaling.
Is there anyone else doing this at this point, or are they really the first kind of building this model this way?
I'm sure there are other groups that are doing this from a software perspective. SambaNova is a little bit of software and a lot of hardware. I mean, it primarily is a hardware company.
Yeah.
Because not to my knowledge or any of the other hardware companies trying to get into the modeling business. Obviously, OpenAI is mostly a software company. Google's got a little bit of both of that world. They have their tensor units, and then their Bard / Gemini / whatever it is called project. It would make sense that somebody else gets into the software side of doing this.
Yeah.
Certainly, someone could do it on an Nvidia processor too. It's pretty pragmatic, but you'd have to get your hands on an Nvidia processor, and that's hard to do.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And does this
Yeah, and I
solve?
think that's the sweet spot that SambaNova is in, that they've built their hardware to work with their software. And so it's that, perfect marriage. They call theirs is an RDU. I've forgotten the exact name, but they don't use GPUs. They use a different architecture, which
Yeah.
takes advantage of this notion of, hey, I've got somebody to route it up front, and then I've got the experts underneath.
Mm. And does this solve the other problem for like large companies that kind of block access to OpenAI or even Gemini? Like they don't allow the capability of using these public LLMs from security perspective. This allows them to possibly bring it in house and create their own LLMs with their own data. Correct? Am I right in saying that?
There's some of that. I mean, so the Microsoft environment is pretty walled off, but even at best, it's using a RAG-like architecture, right? So this is augmenting the search with some information and then getting back something that's customized. We'll call it customized, where the SambaNova version of the world is saying, yeah, you're only doing that because you don't have access to GPUs that make any sense. We have something like that available, so don't use a modified architecture. Get your own LLM, and that's what they're offering. So it's a full blown retraining of a model in many cases. That's what I think is kind of unique about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
they can keep it. If you buy their appliance, you now own all the GPUs. They're not GPUs, but the capabilities of GPUs yourself. You don't have to share it with anyone. You can import an open source model, but then you can do whatever you want with it, and no one else will ever know because you can wall it off. And so it does provide that security. That's the beauty of it.
yeah, that's neat. Now, every innovative approach comes with its own set of challenges. So what are some potential limitations or hurdles that you foresee possibly for the widespread adoption of SambaNova's technology?
Well, you still need to know how to use it, right? And there's just not that many people in the world that could build these things from scratch, right? So I'd say that's a big part. The guardrails that exist in the open source, excuse me, the open AI world, and for as little as they seem, they still exist. There's some guardrails there. Whereas, if you took offline an LLM and just started playing with it, and you get wild answers, you wouldn't even know. Like, there's no external world telling you they're wild answers anymore. Marty, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, I think a little bit is going to be, you know, cost or the size of the resource is going to be a bit of a barrier for some companies because it's like a enterprise level, commercial level LLM tool. It's not for experimentation because you're really you're kind of buying a NASCAR here. And if you just really want to get to, you're a little old lady who wants to get to the grocery store from your house, NASCAR probably isn't the right vehicle to use. And so it's going to be it's going to be companies that have a very well developed use case that they need to apply at scale. That's the sweet spot for the SambaNova. They're going to help you save a ton of money by doing this at scale, and the security is there. But if you're just like a student dabbling in the LLM space, you're not going to go to SambaNova for that. You're going to do that on a Google Colab or something like that, a much smaller scale of a resource. Because the SambaNova resource is a really big, powerful resource. That's what it does.
You obviously have not been in a car with my grandmother to know that for now. The other topic I wanted to dive into, obviously, I'm really hoping we'll get and we're going to reach out and try to get some SambaNova team members on to kind of chat in more detail, even directly with them. But I don't know if you guys saw last week, CEO Frank Slootman stepping down and retiring from Snowflake. I don't know if you guys saw that news. But I was excited to see who also is actually stepping in and becoming the new CEO of Snowflake. And I'm probably going to butcher his name, but Sridhar Ramaswamy is going to be the new CEO and is the new CEO of Snowflake. But I don't know if you guys saw his background in particular, but he came over when Snowflake actually acquired Neva, which is an AI tool in and of itself. And he was initially the kind of senior VP of AI for Snowflake before now stepping into as the CEO. So I think I'm excited to see. They obviously have some heavy AI plans in the future if that's the individual that they're kind of pushing into that CEO seat. But I don't know if you guys saw that information or have any takes on that.
I did. I mean, I'm kind of bullish on the idea. The market didn't like it,
Yeah.
but but yeah, I mean, if you Snowflake needs to be directed. They need some direction around making the Gen AI world work with the business intelligence world that they are in. I'll speak freely here. They're like last couple years, I can't tell where their direction is. Is it, do they want to do automated modeling? Do they want to do, container services? Do they want, it's just like all over the place. Yet they are far and away the leader in getting centralized data warehousing done.
Yeah.
But I don't see like a good Gen AI running on top of their environment yet. And so it seems to me that this fella is, I mean, I would guess, gonna do that. And so I love it. I think it could be great.
Yeah. Which, I mean, the stock market, I mean, anytime Slootman steps down as CEO anywhere, like anything that guy touches turns to gold, it seems like. So now,
did they have bad results, Mitchell? I didn't read that much into it. I didn't notice that they were.
It seemed like the results weren't bad overall, or even their forecasting looking ahead. It wasn't quite to the level that I think either Forbes or Google had projected coming up into the first quarter and second quarter of this year. But they were still well over their expectations closing out last year. It's just the aspect of Slootman stepping down, and there's a lot of assumptions that the C-suite that's around Slootman would also eventually depart as well. But I believe all of them, including their CFO, said that he's around for at least 3 more years with Snowflake. And he plays a lot more of as much as he's a CFO, he's more of an operational CFO too. So there's a lot that he has his hands in across the board. Curious, do you guys see is there any SambaNova Snowflake combo use cases that could exist, or is that something that I'm not even clueless on? But
I mean, you need data in order to
Data warehousing aspect of it, maybe.
yeah,
it's
all in one source.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying. I don't know. I mean, you've got to get. Again, there's some companies out there that are specializing in putting some BI, generative AI on top of BI and data warehousing. I think they're really interesting. It seems like it's tailor made for Snowflake to do this, but Lord knows if they're directed enough. I mean, I've just seen so many weird, like, disparate initiatives in the last year and a half that I'm really hoping that they just focus on generative AI use cases and stop all the other stuff.
I love it.
Curious. Like, I'm blunt.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we'll obviously keep everyone updated too on our thoughts on SambaNova, and even see where Snowflake goes with the new CEO here. But thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe. Let us know your thoughts on SambaNova's new model, Samba 1, and where you see that going. But tune in next week, all.